Okay, so when my sister was 18, she finally came back to live with us. But she didn't come alone. She brought my new baby nephew, who was about 5 months. He was the most cutest and adorable baby you could ever meet. He laughed a lot. But when he got in his moods, wow, you would want to tear your head off. The kid would scream so loud, it was crazy. So, remember when he was little, my sister was moving in, and she was now a single mother, and so I was helping her out, and, well, I was about 14 at the time, and I had to help out. Well, I didn't have to, but I wanted to. So I helped out my sister, and I used to bathe him, I used to change him, take him everywhere I went pretty much. I remember one night, me and my parents, we went to church, and we took him, and he hadn't been feeling good the whole week. But I think that night in particular, he was, there was something wrong with him. So I was taking care of him at church, and he started crying and crying and crying. So I decided, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go feed him. He didn't want his bottle, which was weird because usually whenever he cried, he would want to eat, but like he would just scream after he was done again. Like he would just keep crying and crying and crying, even though he had already eaten. So that night, it got me worried, and honestly, I felt like I was his mother at the time because my sister wasn't around, and it was freaking me out that he wasn't eating and everything. So it's like, okay. And so we took him home that night, and I think that night we actually had to take him to the hospital. Turns out he had some kind of virus in his stomach that was really bad, and they had to keep him overnight. I don't know if any of you have ever seen, but sometimes on babies they wrap this kind of like heating pad kind of thing on them, but like it helps them monitor what's going on in their stomach, and it has like a bunch of blue lights and stuff like that. Remember that night when my sister got there, she was scared. Our family was freaking out. Like, he was 5 months old. He wasn't old at all. And so, and a lot of the doctors were wondering what was going on. They were trying to see what was going on because when he was first born, he almost died. So, it was a big thing not only for our family, but also for the doctors that was going on. But he turned out all right, and later that night we went home and we took him, but he still was non-stop. He would not stop crying. It was a non-stop cry. He was screaming. I remember sleeping, and that night I had fell asleep in the living room, and my dad, with his bright ideas, decided, oh, the baby's crying, I'm gonna take him to the living room. So he got there, and I think it was like 5 in the morning, and I got so mad. I was so exhausted. I'd been up the night before, everything, with my nephew, and I literally put him in the carrier and shoved the bottle in his mouth just so he could finally shut up. And so that night, well, he did. He went to sleep. And after the next few years, he's now 3. There's been times where I've had to stay up with him at night, or because he doesn't feel good, or just because, things were going on. And so, remember one time he also kept me up till 4 in the morning watching cartoons. He would not go to bed. He was watching cartoons, Donald Duck, Chip and Dale, Goofy, Mickey Mouse, all the old cartoons. And I got so mad, like, I swear, like, when I get around babies, it gives you that you want to rip your head off feeling. And so I took him and finally went to bed. Well, now I'm 17, and my parents decide they're gonna adopt a 6-month-old baby. And I think a few weeks ago, our AC went off. And it was crazy because it was so hot. It was getting so hot in the house, and she was screaming, and I could hear her down the hall. And I was like, okay, so I went and I got her because my mom was already frustrated, wanting to rip her hair out. And I took her to the living room, and I put her head on a cover, and I laid her body on the tile. And after a while, she finally fell asleep. But that whole night, she was falling asleep, waking up, falling asleep, waking up, was crying and screaming. And didn't want her bottle, or she didn't want the pacifier, and it was just complicated. And so finally at about 4 something in the morning, I had school the next day, so it was like 4 something in the morning, and I took her to my mom and I said, here, you have her, she's yours. And I gave her to my mom, and I guess she fell asleep afterwards, but when I think about it, I'm so happy that I can return these kids to their own mothers. It's a lot better than having to take care of kids. Pleasure's pleasure, but I mean, guys, do you really need kids?